Cutback for Vasilev, and Lukic! A banger of a strike for Jovan Lukic's first MLS goal!
It's fallen out to Westfield! Oh, wow! He's nearly taken the roof of the net off! Philadelphia pounce again!
Who gets his goal in his Union debut? The record signing, off and running in his first appearance for the club. Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and man, the historical nightmare start for the Philadelphia Union continues with a 2-1 loss to Chicago Fire Saturday afternoon. And the Union, a long, deserved break off with the FIFA International window coming up. We will get into all that. We'll get into last night's games, the Union continuing to hurt themselves with poor giveaways, the importance of the international break, lessons that Bradley Carnell learned from his second year in Cincinnati before he was let go, and then hearing from Alejandro Bedoya and Andre Blake after the game. But as you guys can see, watching live on the show, you guys don't see Jose, because Jose is out in Seattle, even though Jose is allowing us to broadcast this from his Twitter account. I appreciate you, Jose, for that, as I am sure he is listening back to this live. We are joined by the Philadelphia Inquirer's Owen Hewitt. Thank you so much, Owen, for joining me tonight.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on. I'm excited to be on for episode 400. Congratulations. It's a big milestone.
It is. Time flies, honestly. Time flies. Jose and I were talking about that a little bit, and spoiler alert for people that are listening, Jose and I tried to get a preview episode done with Andrew Wiebe. He had let us know that he was going to be in Philadelphia for this game, and so we had been talking, I feel like, the last month and everything. We're like, all right, we'll try to get this set up. Never was possible, but the next best person is yourself, Owen. So I'm glad that you're here for episode 400. It's a big milestone. Can't go back from it, and super excited to have you on. And for some of our listeners here who may not be familiar with your work in the Philadelphia Inquirer, if you want to go ahead and let people know a little bit about yourself, when you started writing and covering the Union.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been covering the Union for a couple years now, more consistently since the start of this season and through the end of last season, doing work with the Inquirer. And then before that, I actually did a little work with Philly Soccer Now, just covering Union 2. And now it's, previews, gamers, working with the great Jonathan Tannenwald, and helping out with the desk's coverage of the Union and bringing more coverage to soccer around the city, and especially ahead of the World Cup. And so it's been great. I've been, on with them in a part-time capacity for about 3 months at this point, and I'm having a bunch of fun doing it. So.
Yeah, and it's, I guess, maybe not the ideal season or start to the season where, the fan base seems to be down. The players seem to be down, even though, they may say otherwise, but you can tell the mood in the locker room is a lot different than it was the first game of the season. And it's to be expected when you start the season 0-5. But yeah, it is nice to see, Jose and I talk about it all the time. We would love to have the local radio stations give more coverage to the Union. We have listeners of the show say that all the time in the comment section, and the Philadelphia Inquirer does a great job. And so we appreciate the work that you and Jonathan do. And like I said, really, really happy to have you on. And just to maybe give the fans a little bit different voice, Valerie came in here and said, "Oh, cool, I have enjoyed reading Mr. Hewitt's article." So yeah, look, somebody knows who you are, Owen. So it's always a good sign.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's great. People are actually sometimes it's hard to know if people are actually reading it. So it's great. It's great to hear that. Thank you.
It is definitely good to get the feedback, and whether it's positive or negative. I mean, Jose and I feel like get so many negative comments. People don't agree with what we say, but at least people are listening, and you don't have to agree with us, but to get eyes on yourself is always a positive thing. But let's go ahead, Owen, and get into this game last night. Like we had said, Philadelphia Union fall once again to Chicago Fire 2-1. Goal scorers being Hugo Kuipers in the 3rd minute of stoppage time in the first half. Eloski scores in the 7th minute of stoppage time in the first half, and then Jonathan Bamba scores in the 58th minute to seal the victory for Chicago Fires. And Yeah, I guess for me, I mean, this is a historic bad form run for the Union. They've never lost 5 games in a row. This is the first time that the Union have lost the first 3 home games to start an MLS season. They have lost 3 straight home games in MLS before, back in 2012, but back in that Hart season in 2024, they had actually lost 4 straight MLS home games at one point during that season. And so, yeah, I mean, the Union are just breaking all sorts of records, getting close to breaking records in the way that you don't want to break records. And I think for me last night, when I'm watching that game, I think this was probably the Union's worst performance from open play chances. The best chances on the night came from set pieces. You obviously get the goal from Frankie Westfield's throw in into Alejandro Bedoya, who flicks it on to Orlowski. You have an Orlowski free kick. You have Bedoya hitting the crossbar in the first half from a header off of a set piece attempt. You have Nathan Harriel, who gets on the end of a Orlowski free kick in the second half of the game. Not able to put that one on target, which I believe it does win a corner kick for the Union. But yeah, not much from the Union in terms of open play in this game. And that's kind of been the trend throughout this season so far, 5 games in.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I had noted that I was watching the game back today some, and I had noted that the set pieces looked a lot more purposeful, which was something that had been a problem over the first 4 MLS matches. Um, but the open play runs, you're absolutely right. It doesn't look like that front line is really working right now. There were a lot of moments where things just seemed disjointed. You had balls played out from the back that were, too long, short, off target, and it never seemed like they were able to make that real decisive run. And even in moments where they did dispossess Chicago in the back, they're they weren't very opportunistic. They didn't have that touch that they needed to have. It There wasn't quick action on the ball, which is something I feel like we've seen. You could say that about almost every game so far this year. Is that it seemed like they really struggled once they had it. The one that sticks out in my brain is Indy Vasilev getting the ball turned over, or I think it was in the corner. It came out to Vasilev. Vasilev, he could take a shot. He passes it off to Westfield, and the ball just rolls way, way far for Westfield. And like that's one of the better chances of the second half is that string. And that's a problem, right? Is if you're not getting those decisive sort of quick trigger moments in the attack and third when you've just turned it over, the system's not set up to score many other ways. So when that's not working, and it wasn't against Chicago, it's a concern. But I did think that the set pieces were of an improved quality and had a little bit more purpose, I thought, last night.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I had talked about the Union's best chances. You had a free kick there from Vasilev in the second half. You had the throw in that they obviously get the score from, and yeah, you can't say that that's been the case a lot of times this season, the set piece deliveries. And I think a big part of that is you lose Kai Wagner, who had been a staple on set pieces for the Union since 2019. And I had joked with Jose, we were texting throughout the game, and I'm like, well, I guess nobody else on the team really had to practice set pieces once you knew Kai Wagner was going to be the one taking it, whether it be a free kick or a corner kick. It was always going to be Kai. One thing that I thought was a little interesting is when Jeremy Raffanello comes into the game last night, I thought maybe we would see Raffanello take some of those free kicks because we've seen him in the past. He has a good ball, a good shot from out wide. And yeah, the Union just continued to allow Orlowski to take it. And I know Kevin Sullivan took a couple corner kicks on the night. And I probably would have wanted to see maybe Kevin a little bit more on, force Brady to come off his line on one of his corner kicks, punch the ball out. And I was like, okay, well, at least this isn't a corner kick that's just getting claimed right away from the goalkeeper like we've seen so many times with Orlowski. But yeah, I agree. I think the set pieces were better. One thing that I was a little bit concerned about that I really hadn't been concerned about at all this season is the Union's approach in the second half. They finally get a goal in the first half in the season with Olaski's header, but the Union have looked so good every single game, whether it be CONCACAF Champions Cup or whether it be MLS play. They start the second half a lot better, and that wasn't the case last night. Owen, not many chances from open play, not many chances that really went promising, that seemed threatening to Chris Brady or Chicago.
Yeah, I had also made note of that. We've seen this team when it gets, backed into a corner, they seem to press on a little bit and try and make something happen. And it didn't seem like it was really working last night. I think I counted 2 or 3 chances maybe that were, could have been goals after Chicago went up 2-1 early in the second half. And yeah, it didn't seem like there was that real level of urgency, or maybe urgency isn't even the right word, but there wasn't a creativeness. There wasn't that kind of rush that we've seen from the Union, in the second half against Club America, or, a couple other times this season where we've seen them be really, really effective at creating opportunities. Whether or not those opportunities hit the back of the net, another question. But yeah, it was a little worrisome. I agree with you to see them not be able to kind of make that push in the second half.
Yeah, and we can go ahead and switch topics to something that's been a concern to me is the Union just continuing to hurt themselves, in my opinion, with poor giveaways. And Bradley Carnell, and we'll play the clip here in a bit, talked about the philosophy, this play style allows for mistakes to happen. You take risk, and soccer is a game of risk. And I agree with Bradley Carnell wholeheartedly, but last night, specifically on the second goal, Chicago did nothing. That was the Union. They hurt themselves. Ndinga has a heavy touch in the midfield, doesn't track back, and then it's a quick transition from Chicago on the goal. And I do feel bad for Frankie Westfield on that play, because he knows that the run from Kuipers is eventually going to come into the box, and he knows he has Jonathan Bamba in back of him. And so he's essentially defending 2 players, and it's, who do you attack? Do you go and attack Kuipers? Do you go and pay attention to Bamba? And Westfield steps up for a second, thinking the ball is going to go to Kuipers, and then he realizes, yeah, this is going over both of our heads, and he knows that Bamba's behind him, and it's a great first time finish from Bamba there. But yeah, it's simple things. I feel like the Union just continuing to hurt themselves. 37 times last night they lost possession of the ball. 24 of those came on bad touches. 5 from Philip Ndinga last night, and yeah, I get it, right? He's only played a couple games with the Union. I don't want to be too harsh on him. And I had some people commenting during the game saying, why did the Union go out and sign a left back that's right footed? And yeah, it is a little bit odd. It is a little bit strange to have a left back where you would essentially want a left back that's left footed, not right footed. And I'm not saying that's the reason why Ndinga gave up the ball. And Bradley Cornell, you could tell, was a little bit frustrated, saying that, we don't want to be outworked, and you got to hustle back when you make mistakes. And you didn't see a lot of that on the goal that they gave up for Bamba. But 24 times with bad touches for the 37 times that they lost possession, 73 passes complete, which again, I know Bradley Cornell says that this is a system, this is a philosophy that doesn't emphasize having the ball, always being accurate with the ball, but we're seeing a lot of simple passes this season, Owen. It's not just this game. It's in multiple games this season where the Union just can't hit a simple pass. It's a couple yards in front of a player and the ball is going out of bounds. And that just simply wasn't happening a lot last season. 37 times against Atlanta, they lost possession, 34 against San Jose, 32 against New York City, and 30 times against DC United. And so as these games keep going on, the Union are losing possession of the ball more and more. And I do think that is a little bit concerning. And yeah, it's one thing to get the ball stolen off of you, but it's another thing just to take a heavy touch. And I get it that it happens, but to see that number rise every single game, for me, that's a little bit concerning. When, yeah, it's not really so much the opposition hurting the Union, it's the Union hurting themselves.
Yeah, that does feel like it's been a huge part of this season so far, is just kind of self-inflicted wounds a little bit. I mean, even from the level of the first two games where you're down to 10 men, right? Where those red cards were a little bit of mental errors, and certainly we're seeing some more errors in build up and heavy touches and losing possession and all that. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it did last year, and it's a very disjointed sort of approach almost, because there are pieces obviously that were moved, but systematically it should look and feel the same. And right now it doesn't quite have the same look and feel that you would expect of the system that we saw on display last year. And for me, I wonder how much of that is um, personnel change versus how much of that is the book being out on how to play the Union and kind of the best practices. And when we saw it last year, it was kind of new with a new group, and there was a little bit of fire underneath it, and it really felt like teams had a hard time keeping up. And it is not really felt that way this year, where it doesn't really feel like there's been a game this year where they've had firm control over a match in the way they might have last year.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something where fans have called it out, saying that maybe the Union moved on from too many people. And Jose and I've said it multiple times that I understand from a business aspect, you're probably not going to get a high enough offer like that for Glesnes ever again. I know Jonathan Tannenwald had been bringing the drum the last couple of years to move on from Glesnes, and the Union probably would have done that in 2024 if they would have had a buyer. Nobody was simply willing to pay the Union anything for Glesnes after he had a horrible 2024 season. And to his credit, comes back and puts up Defender of the Year numbers last year for the Union. I would argue Makanya had just as good, maybe if not a little bit better of a season than Glesnes. But yeah, I mean, Glesnes has a strong season, and Union cash in on a high offer from LA Galaxy. Todd simply wasn't going to get paid what he thought he was worth here in Philadelphia, at least. And so instead of losing a player on a free like you did a Julian Kranza a few seasons ago, why not go out there and get as much money as you can possible? DC United gave you an offer that was too good to turn down, and Kai Wagner has been very vocal for years, I feel like, talking about wanting to go back to Europe, and the Union finally get a offer that's legitimate, and Kai Wagner winds up going to the championship with Birmingham, and it's had a wonderful start. I know he's hurt now with Birmingham, but yeah, all those moves that the Union made make sense to me from a business standpoint, and I get it. Fans are like, well, don't you want to be competitive? And I think the Union thought, okay, look, we can go out there and replace these guys. We know they're not going to be like for like players. We want to get younger. We want to get quicker. It's going to take some time, and I don't think this coaching staff or players would have thought that it would have taken this long of time. But I'm sure we'll get into it at some point. The Union just simply haven't had full weeks of training because they've been playing multiple games a week with CONCACAF Champions Cup and MLS play. And when you change that many players, yes, practice makes a difference. Going over the film, Bradley Carnell said on a plane's one thing, but seeing it, visualizing it on an actual field makes all the difference in the world. So, yeah, I do think you are probably spot on that. Yeah, it's a lot of new guys and still trying to get used to one another, learn the system that Bradley Cornell wants to play. But yeah, 5 games in a row, you would have hoped that they would have had at least a point by now, and not to have that, the only team in MLS not to have a point. Yeah, I think fans are justified being a little concerned.
And it's difficult because you look at all 5 of those games, and you could maybe, except for Atlanta, you could pick out a couple moments that go different, and maybe we're looking at a team that's 2 draws and 3 losses, or 3 draws and 2 losses. They haven't been lopsided, but the Union haven't been in control, which I think is concerning.
Yeah, super concerning. And the Union have been going behind often, and that really wasn't the case last year. I mean, Bradley Carnell talked about it. They put teams under pressure so many times last year, wore them out, and then the goals were coming for the Union. It's just simply not happening this season. And I actually think too, Owen, up until we got into the stoppage time in the first half, Union defended well against Chicago. I don't think Chicago really troubled the Union all that much. And then there was a couple moments. You had Andre Blake making a save in stoppage time. You had a block shot by the Union, and then the goal eventually comes. Chicago were building that pressure in stoppage time, but yeah, up until then, I thought the Union were pretty solid. And I think if Bradley Cornell and that team would have went into the half tied 0-0, they would have taken that. They would have had some breathing room, finally not conceded a goal in the first half. And yeah, it was not meant to be conceding so late in stoppage time. But at the same time, too, yeah, thank goodness that the Union finally got a goal in the first half, because I can imagine that would not have been ideal for the team to go down 1-0, concede the way that you did so late in the first half. And to their credit, they don't give up. They fight back and get a goal. But I do want to play the first clip of the night. Bradley Cornell talking about the Union turning over the ball. And so we'll go ahead and dissect or give our thoughts on what Bradley said here in a moment.
Well, and Ding has just joined us, so I wouldn't say that is the main reason for a bad touch. I mean, a bad touch can get away from everybody, but what's the reaction about the bad touch, or what's the follow action? I always believe that that's the more important one. We have a game model that's actually quite you're allowed to make mistakes, and a soccer game is a game of mistakes, right? So unfortunately, we made too many mistakes with the reactions that got away from us, the follow actions to the bad pass or the bad touch or whatever it was. And then those amount, and every time, they get the ball in transition, it looks like, wow, danger. We turned them over top of the 18 3 games in a row now. We can't get shots off. We can't organize and arrange our feet and what have you. So it's 3 games in a row where we've won the ball on the 18, which is our bread and butter, right? And that's something that, then I go to the confidence factor, right? Then I go to the, are we feeling it right now? And sometimes you can score goals with your eyes closed and things are just working. But right now we've got to dig deep, and everyone has to make sure that, if this was not the MLS, if this was Europe, this is a relegation type feel, so 5 games in only, and then you flip over to the MLS and you just got to get over that line and make the playoffs, right? So that's what this quest is now, to reshift the focus and to be really humble, because if we don't work for anything, or if we're not willing to work harder than the opponent, then unfortunately the results won't go our way.
So there's a lot there that I think was pretty good from Bradley Cornell. And I don't want to speak for you, Owen, but I do think this is one of Bradley Cornell's stronger press conferences that we've seen in his time in Philadelphia. He was really open and honest throughout the press conference with his answers. And to his credit, we could have came in there and said a couple words and then left after a few moments, but he stuck around for 12 minutes and answered, I thought, some pretty good questions from everybody in the room. But he had hit on something that you mentioned earlier in the show, turning the opposition over at the 18, 3 games in a row, and not being able to get shots off. And that is, like Bradley said, their bread and butter. So many times we saw the Union turn opposition over in their own half, that close to goal, and within 10 seconds they're getting a shot off. It might not result in a goal, but they're getting a shot off, and it's just not simply happening right now. Do you think that comes down to simply, a lot of new pieces, or as Bradley had said, maybe it is a little bit of a confidence factor losing 5 games now in a row?
I think it certainly could be a share of both. I can't imagine that anyone in that attack is feeling particularly good about the way this season has started, and the lack of goals once you exclude the opening round of the Champions Cup. But I think there's also a huge part of it that's just, it doesn't seem like there's anyone on the front line that feels super confident to convert that turnover into a shot right now, or have the ability to make that quick turn, make that snap decision, the quick action, the follow action. One of the other things that Carnell was talking about in that clip. after the turnover, what happens? And it doesn't really feel like there's anybody right now who has the sort of confidence to say, ping it towards goal, just try and make something happen, chaos in the 18, and maybe you get a rebound, maybe, you're in a set piece, a penalty, just anything that would be a kind of a forward offensive attack momentum builder. I've already mentioned it, but that Indy Vassilev moment, that may have been the moment of the match for me, because it comes after they've gone down the goal, and really there should be at least a shot there. And if it's from Vassilev, he doesn't have a great angle, fine, maybe it's a rebound, maybe it forces a save, maybe it deflects out, something from that, because it was a turnover right on the outside of the 18-yard box, and it really felt like the moment where it was like they've got a chance to scrap a point out of this. And I empathize with Vassilev, because you could see where he was thinking. You could see the run that Westfield was making up the side was great. If the ball had gotten there, it would have been a goal. I have no doubt about that. I think it would have been finished, but I think they're overthinking it a little bit right now. It feels like in attack. There's just made a little bit of hesitation, and I assume, I'm not a professional athlete. I assume that builds up, that sort of thing metastasizes when you are dealing with a stretch like this.
Yeah, I agree, and fair play to Bradley Carnell saying, if this was Europe, this would be a relegation type feel after 5 games, and he's spot on. But that is the beauty of MLS. It's like Bradoria said it after the game. It doesn't matter how well you start; it's about how you finish, and anything can happen in playoffs. And being Americans, we know that's how it works in any playoffs. And last year, I don't know how you felt, Owen, but we've seen throughout the history of MLS, being the number 1 seed could be a curse. And so many teams struggle winning the Supporters Shield, trying to go far, go on a deep run in the playoffs, and it simply doesn't happen. And so, yes, you always want to win trophies. It's great that the Union won the Supporters Shield, but yeah, maybe there is a little bit of a curse just seeing how often teams struggle after winning the Supporters Shield. And there is something to be said about the consistency throughout the whole season. But once you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. I mean, a couple years ago, who would have had Atlanta beating Inter Miami, where they go to a best of 3? Nobody would have seen that coming. And Messi's first season in the league, that is not ideal. That's not how he would have imagined the playoffs would have went against a pretty poor Atlanta United side. But that just goes to show anything can happen once playoffs happen. But let's go ahead and talk about the international break that's coming up for the Union. So I had talked about it earlier. I've said it, listeners of the show, I've said it for weeks, that having a full week of training is vital. And some people might take that as an excuse, that I'm making an excuse for the team, for Bradley Carnell, but I really don't think that that's an excuse at all, Owen, with all the new pieces that have been brought into the club throughout this window. And it would be one thing if the Union, I'm sure they would have liked to have got all the business done at the same time, but that's not how these transfer windows go. You get players in at different times, and the Union are no different. And so Ndinga being the latest player brought in, but the Union are finally going to have a full 4 weeks, we should say, of training now with no more CONCACAF Champions Cup. The international break coming up, essentially 2 weeks of training. So this is what Bradley Carnell said about the international break and how this is an important restart for the club.
Well, I wouldn't just say a reset. I would say, it needs to be a calibration. I would say it needs to be an assessment of, like a critical analysis of where we are currently and what we need to do. And that's, I'm confident. And then we get 2 weeks of training pretty much, right? So where we can really push the needle and push the messaging and really show with enforced, it's easy sitting on a video when we do a recap on a plane or when we do a recap with the guys individually or whatnot. It looks really easy. from my office or what have you. But when you do it on the field, it makes so much more sense, and you can push it in a really different way, in a practical way, so the players feel it and actually can try and get that those automatic responses that we feel that are lacking right now.
So, Owen, how important do you think these next 2 weeks of practice are going to be for this team? Having 4 weeks of practice for up until, I would say, League's Cup, until they start another competition in August.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and I think it's an important thing to remember about this start in comparison to last year. Is, last year after 24 had finished, there weren't many fixtures on the calendar outside of league play. There weren't any fixtures on the calendar outside of league play as the team started its season last year, and I think that makes a huge difference when you are entering a season with pieces that have come in at separate times, and like you said, all that business didn't get done in the same window, or not. It did in the same window, but not at the same time. There were, staggered introductions for those new pieces that have come on. And so I think it is huge for this team to kind of get, almost 2 weeks before it has to play again, to kind of get to know itself a little better. That seems like it'll be a real help. And I think we heard it from Carnell, and we certainly heard it from Bedoya post game that, I think he was saying it couldn't come at any better time. Like, they need it. It seems like maybe the best thing for this team to block it off in a 5-match sort of stretch, as Carnell said, that they approach. Seems ideal that you would have this 5-match stretch kind of physically barricaded by 2 weeks worth of downtime and not downtime, but training time. And then once you get to Charlotte, it's a new slate of matches. I think that will be crucial for them, and I think a lot will be told about this season and its direction once we get to the other side of this. Are we seeing something that looks like what we've seen over the past 5 weeks, or are we going to see something that looks different? I think that's a huge indicator for how this thing is going to go.
Yeah, you're spot on. I agree with you. And the one thing that I've tried to tell fans, and fans can have their own opinions and everything, but nobody wants to see the Union get knocked out of competitions. You want to go as far as you can in competitions, but getting knocked out of CONCACAF Champions Cup, now you get that full week of training. And so what I've been saying, okay, well, now you have no excuses. You just have MLS play to look forward to. You're going to have 4 weeks of training, and you can dial in those little details that maybe you couldn't do with multiple games during the week. And so for me, this next month, if things continue to go on this downtrend, yeah, I would expect people to be maybe a little bit more vocal, whether it be the players, whether it be fans, whether it be whomever. If people want to judge the season in the next month with just MLS games, I would totally understand that, because let's face it, Owen, 10 more games to go, and then you have that long break because of the FIFA World Cup. And yeah, you would have loved to have got some points before you head away to this international break. And yeah, Andre Blake, I know, is probably upset leaving the way things are with the Union, and he has a big game with Jamaica coming up, and you could argue this is his biggest game of his career. He's played in some big games with the Union, some big games with Jamaica, but maybe none bigger than trying to qualify for the World Cup with his home nation. And so you had mentioned Alejandro Bedoya talking about the break. So here is Bedoya post game after the Union's loss to Chicago about that break coming up.
Yeah, I mean, shit, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we need a mental and physical break, I think, from how we've started, and just make sure that we can finally put in a proper week of full training. we haven't been able to do that. We haven't been able to properly work on things because of the Champions Cup. It's so games every midweek, so training has just kind of been a lot more, maybe some walkthroughs and trying to protect guys' legs and stuff like that. But now it's time to turn the page. We're out of that competition. The focus has to be on league play now and make sure we get some proper training sessions in. And like I said, we'll see who's up for it.
And Bedoya's always been vocal, just like Kai Wagner was here. I mean, two of the more vocal, louder leaders in that locker room. And Bedoya too, at one point during the talk, said, if he really said what he wanted to say, he would probably get in trouble. And you could tell Bedoya was frustrated, but he came out there and faced the media, even though I'm sure he probably didn't want to. None of those players do when you lose 5 games in a row. But yeah, to their credit, they go out there, they answer questions, and they're honest. And we'll hear from Bedoya and Blake later on in the show. Just this 5-game losing streak, just having, how do you fix it? How do you stop it? And so, yeah, both guys very frustrated. Both guys going through this for the first time in their Union career. But as Bedoya said, this break couldn't have came at a better time. The Union players that aren't going on international duty will still be here, obviously training and learning. And we did hear from Carnell during the week that Alado was away from the team for personal reasons. I know Joe Tanzi came out last night and said that that was due to Alado. Sources told him turning up late to training. I saw Jonathan Tannenwald said on Blue Sky that there are other instances too, and we'll see if that comes to fruition, comes to light. But Alado is one of these players who the Union paid $4.5 million for. Carnell said they hope to welcome him back to the team soon, and he's a player I think that could use all the training, all the connection that he can use. He's 20 years old. Carnell's done a good job reminding the media, reminding the fans that, hey, look, we're going to be patient with this guy. It's a new team for him, a new style of play for him, a new country. He's 20 years old. Let's relax for a bit. And Carnell's talked about simplifying the pressing cues and changing the formation just to try to get him linked up as comfortable as possible. But yeah, he's a player I'm looking at, Owen, that could very much so benefit from these 2 weeks of training before they head down to Charlotte.
I think he's a prime candidate for a guy who will hopefully get a little bit, a little bit of that learning under his belt during this break. And I don't think there's any player in the attack that is going to, not benefit from a little more time to get some connection and, kind of link up and figure out what the attack needs to be. Anello, another piece that I think, if he was out the last game, I believe that was it a hamstring, a quad
hamstring injury. So yeah, Carnell said he'll be out for a couple weeks. So yeah, this would be perfect for him to be available, but yeah, you just never know.
All those pieces, Stas as well, I think they really benefit from having this time to work on those sorts of things, pressing cues, stuff that is in that real minutia that, where you say, all right, well, maybe if we can do this a little more effectively, it helps the whole system run a little better. So I think it will be a crucial moment to see how they come out on the other side of that break.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so let's go ahead and talk about a question that Bradley Carnell was asked after the game. Lessons that he's learned from his second season in charge in St. Louis City, where, yeah, obviously things didn't go as planned for Bradley. His second year in St. Louis after winning the Western Conference in St. Louis's very first season, his first season as a head coach in MLS, or I should say not interim, and a team that he's actually in charge of. And yeah, Bradley Carnell was asked about the similarities between that season compared to the start to this season. And this is what Carnell had to say about that.
Yeah, listen, I think I can argue that this is a different slide. You know what I mean? And what can I take out of it? I just, try and take the next day as it is and make sure I'm living for the next day and the next moment and the next opportunity to get better, right? So told the boys now, like, I've had 5 learning moments now, losing 0-5 in the league. These are 5 learning moments that, I want to get done with. I'm over with the learning. Now we have to embrace it and move on, right? So, and this is what I have to do, right? So, I mean, the one common thing is that you have a rebuild, right? So you rebuild and you get going again, new players, and I'm an ambitious coach, and I trust my philosophy, and I trust my ability to coach a team, and that's what I do, and I stood true to that. Because I'm not going to fight against every player that leaves or what have you, or not commit to a sell or something like this. So we're in this together, and I support the club supports me, and I want to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction, and I feel that we are.
And so it's interesting too, Owen, when you go back and look at Bradley Carnell's first season with St. Louis compared to his second, and it is a little bit similar. Where in his second year in charge of St. Louis, they lost some key players in that roster. They lost Nico Garcini, the forward to Como they sold. They wound up losing John Nelson, a left back to LA Galaxy. They lose Jarrett Stroud to DC United that season. They also lose Lucas Bartlett, a center back, to DC United that season. And yeah, I know maybe Lucas Bartlett wasn't playing a ton of minutes. He was still playing. I believe he played 17 games that season. But yeah, there are some similarities. I mean, I would say Garcini, 10 goals scored was up there. I'm trying to pull it out right now if Transfer Market wants to go ahead and load. But you lose a goal scorer that was tied for your most goals scored in that season with Joel Klaus. 10 goals is a lot of goals to replace, and it's something that Union fans have been saying too in terms of losing Ty Baribo. 16 goals, it's a lot of goals to try to replace, but the Union go out there and get multiple attackers this season in an LO. They go out and get an Alado. They go out and promote Stas Korzanowski, who scored for the club in CONCACAF Champions League Cup, and I get it was against Defense Force, but the Union go out and make moves that they thought were going to push the club forward and really not have a drop off. And again, these guys I know haven't really panned out the way that I think anybody would have hoped yet. And again, we've said it a million times already, but we'll see. We'll see what this team is made of. These new guys. We've heard Bedoya said it. We've heard Carnell say it at a different point in his press conferences. Yeah, this is where we get to see boys turn into men. Who's going to step up? And so, yeah, those new players, you do have high expectations, and some players aren't meeting those expectations right now. And so, yeah, some similarities where St. Louis got rid of players that were key core players for Carnell in his first season, and now he has to find different ways to adapt in his second season, and now he's having to do the same thing here in Philadelphia. And you kind of feel bad for Carnell a little bit, where yeah, he has these players, but you heard him say it there. He adapts. He has his philosophy he still believes in. He's not going to change that. He's not going to go away from that. And yeah, it's just trying to get those players to buy into it.
Yeah, and I thought it was very interesting to hear him say that, it's a different slide, because there are so many points of comparison that you can make between kind of year one, year two, whether or not they're completely warranted or direct is a separate question. But I thought it was interesting to hear him say that, for him it's different, and he's valuing every opportunity, and taking them as learning moments. And as good as learning moments are, you don't learn from them until maybe you find some results. But I thought that was very interesting. That really stuck out to me. Sitting in the room was just, he didn't seem super eager to make any direct comparisons, and I understand it in the terms of situationally it's different, right? Maybe there are some similarities, but just on the baseline of one was here, one was there, different clubs, different players, different major differences in those aspects. And I thought it was interesting to hear him say, how committed he is to the club, how committed the club is to him, and kind of that he feels that they are both pulling in the same direction. I thought that was interesting on Wednesday night, or on Saturday night, excuse me.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I I said it earlier in the show. I thought this was one of Bradley Cornell's stronger press conferences. He was open, didn't shy away, didn't hide from any questions asked. And you know, I respect managers, whether it be soccer, baseball, football, basketball, whatever it is. These guys are obviously talented. They got in these positions as head coaches at these different organizations for a reason, and a big part of that is their philosophy. And so, on one hand, I understand why coaches don't want to change away from that philosophy, get away from that philosophy, because it's what got him there in the first place. Look at Wilfred Nancy, did not want to change away from his playing style in Celtic, cost him his job after a month. We saw it with Eric Ramsey with West Brom, gone after a month after he had a successful season with Minnesota United a year prior. You look at Ruben with Manchester United. He gets let go, and he said, "Yeah, I'm not changing my play style. I'm not changing my tactics. I was successful in Portugal with this, and yeah, it obviously didn't fly in the Premier League. Manchester United let him go, and now Manchester United are having a better season with Michael Carrick than they were with Ruben. And so, on one hand, I had said I totally understand your philosophy is what got you here in the first place. It's what's got you jobs. It's what's going to continue to get the jobs. But at the same time, if results aren't going your way, you gotta tinker with things. You gotta change things up a little bit. And I can remember I was on a St. Louis show last year when the Union and St. Louis played, and they had asked me, well, does Cornell seem like he has a plan B, a plan C, a plan D? Because he didn't really have that in St. Louis. And they believed that's why Cornell had lost his job eventually. And I said at the time, well, it doesn't seem like he needs a plan B or C or a D, because the Union are just getting off to a flying start. I mean, you put up 4 goals against Orlando City the first game of the season, the home opener against Cincinnati, you put up 4 goals too. And it's like, how much of a philosophy do you need to change? And yeah, it's easy to say that now in the second season when you're not scoring goals, where now you're conceding goals, which you didn't do a lot of last season. You haven't got a win yet this season. You haven't got a point yet this season. So, yeah, it is fair where fans, I think, start to question Bradley Cornell's tactics, his philosophy, and everything like that. But again, I lean towards a lot of new players, a lot of new faces. Give him time to work out what Bradley Cornell's wanting to coach. Obviously, it worked for Bradley Cornell last year. Won them the Supporter Shield. It won Bradley Cornell and St. Louis City the Western Conference his first season there. So obviously, his style does work. And maybe it is a little bit okay. I need to adapt a little bit better to the players that I have at my disposal now. I think one thing that's hurting the Union a lot, and this player didn't get a lot of credit when he was here, was Mikael Uhre running in behind, making those runs. We're not seeing that with the Union this season. And I do wonder how much that plays into a factor in the attack, where they were used to having a player make those runs in behind. Mikael did such a great job doing that. You just don't really get it this season, Owen.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with you there. And I think a huge part of what impressed me about Carnell's job last season, to sort of speak to his ability as a manager, was there was that stretch in the middle of the season where they were, I'm not looking at it exactly, but there was a long stretch of MLS play where they went unbeaten, unbeaten. And it was stretches where guys weren't available. And, there were piecemeal lineups. They were, figuring out, can Ale Bedoya play at left back? We don't have Ty Bereaville. We don't have Nate Harriel. How can we, we don't have Quinn Sullivan. How can we push that all together? And in many instances, they were able to cobble together lineups that worked and that got results. And so it's interesting and maybe in a bad way to see it flip to this year, where you have some of those problems where you don't have the players that you maybe expected to have, when they went out of the playoffs last season, but you're not putting together lineups where you can get a result. You can, even if it's not your best 11 out on the pitch, or even if it's not the 11 that you envisioned starting when, at the start of the season, you can still go out there and scrap through a result. And that to me is really concerning this year, is kind of the start seems to be the opposite of what they were able to do through last season, and keeping results flowing, even when, they needed to swap out pieces and make those sorts of changes.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll touch on real quick before we hear from Bedoya and Blake is I was a little bit surprised yesterday when they always announce the lineup and then they announce the coach. We heard a boo for Bradley Carnell. I was shocked, honestly. I didn't think we would get to that point, and especially when it was Kids Day, where you have a lot of families out there with their kids, and yeah, hearing families out there with their kids being pretty vocal, pretty loud. I was shocked, honestly. 4 games up into that point before the game even kicked off, and you hear a pretty significant boo. I was shocked, a little bit caught off guard by that, and I see fans on social media saying that they want the club to move on from Bradley Cornell. They want a new coach in here right now, and in my opinion, I've said it. I don't think Bradley Cornell gets let go at any point at all this season. He's in the final year of his contract. You just simply don't renew his contract. You let him see out the year. You bring in a new head coach next year. Who knows what's going to exactly happen with Ernst Tanner, with him being suspended up until June 1st. And maybe the Union go in a new direction. His contract's up also after this season. So did the Union just go in a totally different direction, bring in a new sporting director, a new head coach after the end of this season? It's possible. But the reason I don't think the Union are going to let go of Bradley Cornell is they're still paying Jim Curtin. His contract's up after the end of the season. You're still paying him. If you let go of Bradley Cornell, you got to pay him out through the end of the season, and then you bring in a new head coach. You're paying 3 head coaches, and 2 of them aren't even at the organization anymore. There's no way I see Jay Sugarman in the ownership group doing that. There's just no way. There's no way. And so maybe I get proven wrong, but I just don't see this organization wanting to pay 3 head coaches, with 2 of them potentially not even at the organization anymore if you would let go of Bradley Cornell.
Yeah, that's college football levels of organization right there. How many buyouts can you pay at once?
Yeah, absolutely. But I had talked about it. Bedoya, Andre Blake, and they were pretty stunned. And the only 2 guys who came out to talk to us after the game, which is, makes sense. Been around the club for a while. They've seen a lot. They've won a lot with this organization, but neither of them have been a part of a team that's been this historically bad. And so I guess we'll go ahead and start with Alejandro Bedoya first, starting the season 0-5. And this is what Bedoya had to say in regards to that.
As long as I've been here, this is the worst rut that we've been in the club. So it's really frustrating, especially when I thought a first half where we kind of played in their end pretty much the whole half, and to give up just kind of a cheap goal, get unlucky with Choo kind of his touch leading him out, but just got to be better defensively. But we got to be better on both sides, both ends of the ball, right? It's just simply not good enough. It's simply not good enough from guys that we expect to be better. Quality has to be better. So I think everybody's got to take a hard look in the mirror, not just players, but I think it's from top down.
Yeah, and Bedoya again. He's a guy who gets passionate in his answers, and he's a guy who's not going to shy away from any sorts of questions. And he's a guy cares so deeply about this team. And we saw at Owen last year, talking to Bedoya towards the end of the season, how much he won MLS Cup. He wants MLS Cup so bad, and he had said he's coming back because he wants a chance at MLS Cup. And this is a start to the season that I'm sure him and everybody else in the organization could never have envisioned something like this going. And yes, you move on from players, but you still have an Andre Blake, you still have a Jovan Lukic, a Danley John Jock, and Alejandro Bedoya, players that have been were vital to your team last year, vital to your team in the past. Frankie Westfield had a big season last year. Nathan Harriel had a big season last year for the club. So it wasn't like they were starting totally fresh. But yeah, this historic low for the team. I won 5 straight losses to start the season. Nobody could have saw this coming, and yeah, you could hear it there, the frustration from Bedoya. We'll go ahead and hear from Andre Blake, and then any thoughts you want to have from Bedoya's comments and Andre Blake's right after this.
No, I mean, this is a different kind of struggle, and I've never had this in my life, so I don't know what to say about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever seen Andre Blake stunned. That's stunned, not knowing what to say about how you can take lessons away from 2024 and apply them to 2026. Because as Blake said, he's never had any in his career. 5 straight losses. This is uncharacteristic for this organization.
Yeah. And the part of Bedoya's answer that really stuck out to me, and it probably grabbed a couple people's ears post game, was hearing him talk top down. He repeated it for emphasis in his answer, and it seemed like he was really upset with the general state of the organization, or maybe the general state of the organization is too broad a statement, but he was certainly upset in a very broad sort of way. And like you say, he's a guy that desperately wants to hoist the MLS Cup. And that was encouraging to hear him talk about post game too. He had the same sort of mindset as Carnell, where you go, all right, well, you put those 5 in the rear view, you get to work. And this is a league where, you don't have to finish first. You can get to, you can get across the playoff line and then make some noise. I thought that was good to hear from somebody who's obviously coming from a position of a leader in that locker room, to hear that he is still pushing in that direction and motivated. Because I think it is, I imagine it's a very tenuous moment right now for that group as they try and push through this and put it behind them and get 2 weeks off, and then you've got 10 games before you have to stop again to try and find some points.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I'll say before we get ready to wrap up the show is, yeah, an 0-5 start's concerning. I don't think it's the end of the world. I really don't think it's the end of the world, and I tend to think that I'm a lot more positive than a lot of people. And I said after this next month, if things continue to fall the way that they're falling, if you want to be negative, if you want to start being harsh, critical, I think that's fair. But I want to see what this team can do with a full week of training. I want to see what this team can do once everybody's back healthy. I want to see what this team can do. The transfer window is not closed yet. Do the Union go out and get one more players in? We know they have a lot of game. They have money available. They have roster spots available. Do they go out there and get a piece in before the window closes to help them make a difference, to maybe get them on the right track? But my opinion, I don't think the sky is necessarily falling as bad as people in social media like to point out or make it seem like it is. What about you, Owen? Where's your concern level with this team?
I still am very much in a wait and see place. I think obviously that the Supporters Shield race can be lost in the first 5 weeks, but the cup can't, right? You still have a lot of time to build and see where this team can end up at the end of the year. And it sounds like internally, from the people that we've heard from over the past couple games, there's still faith in this group that these are situations that are correctable, and this is a team that can, if it commits itself in the right ways, get some points, build some momentum headed towards the remainder of the season and after the World Cup break. But yeah, I think it's super crucial to see what it looks like coming out of this 2-week stretch about off, and through those 10 games into May, I believe, when they break for the World Cup. I think that'll be really informative for if this is a team that actually can put that push on.
Yeah, I agree with you, Owen. I definitely do. But we're approaching the hour mark, Owen, and I know Jose and I don't always keep it an hour, but we got close to it, and so I do appreciate that. Look, people, you want to blame me for us going over an hour. Owen and I kept the show within an hour, so I don't know. Maybe it's not me that forces the show to go over. I think Jose and I do both like to talk a lot, so it's probably both 50-50 or for our faults why we go over. But Owen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you for filling in for episode 400. Was a lot of fun dissecting what went wrong in this game against Chicago Fire, the bad start 5 games into the MLS season. And again, for people who maybe not too familiar with you, where can they find you on social media? Where can they go out and check out your work with your writing?
Yeah, sure. I am at OU Nothing, OYOU, the word nothing on social media. Shout out to my middle school self for making that handle, and shout out to high school and college age me for sticking with it. Both on Twitter and on Blue Sky, although I'm much more on Blue Sky. I would recommend people follow me there. And yeah, you can read my stuff at the Inquirer, subscribe. Our soccer desk is putting out great content all of the time. And so we're providing good coverage, and yeah, if people want to read my stuff, that's the place to do it right now.
I appreciate it. And for fans who aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast of The Free Kick. Make sure to check out the YouTube channel live, every single podcast episode, youtube.com/Free Kick Pod, where I also post goals breakdown video. Yes, we will have a goals breakdown video for this game against Chicago Fire, even though it was a loss. I know I haven't given you guys a goals breakdown video the last 2 games. We'll be back. So hopefully you guys, even though it's a loss, check out that video. And if you guys want to check out the goals breakdown video, the podcast, or my writing all in one place, thefreekick.substack.com. And so, yeah, a lot of fun. Episode 400. Hopefully Jose and I can get to 400 more. 800 episodes would be a blast. It seems just like yesterday I saw at the podcast, and had a lot of fun doing it. And many more great guests to come on the show, many more great sound bites and what have you on the show. So again, I appreciate all you guys that listen to the podcast, all you guys who interacted tonight on the YouTube channel, Twitter, with your comments. We saw them. I know I didn't bring them all up, but I say it all the time, and I'll say it once again. You guys are the best part of the show. We appreciate it. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.